poor maid discovers she's the heiress to $1 billion fortune. Hey beautiful souls, welcome to Soul Thread Stories. Today's tale will change how you see fate forever. I stood at the grand staircase of Amberwood Estate, my heart hammering against my ribs. The golden hawk locket around my neck felt heavy, the proof I needed. For years, I'd scrubbed these marble floors, invisible to the elite who now stared at me with open mouths and wide eyes. That maid has lost her mind, someone whispered as I walked into the center of the ballroom. The silk gown I wore, once belonging to my mother, rustled with each step. Lord Cedric Thorne's face drained of color when our eyes met. Did he see the ghost of his brother in my features? The brother whose love story he had buried along with my birthright? "My name is Elara Thorne," I announced, my voice echoing across the suddenly silent hall. "Daughter of Edward Thorne and Mira, the maid you all pretended never existed." Victoria, who had tormented me for years, knocked over her champagne glass. "This is absurd. Remove this servant at once." I opened the locket, revealing the miniature portrait inside. "Is it absurd, Victoria? Or is it simply inconvenient for your inheritance plans?" The gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through autumn leaves. Lady Isolde stepped forward, her aged hand gripping her cane. "The girl speaks the truth. I have protected her secret long enough." Lord Cedric's hand trembled as he reached for the documents I held out. His brother's journal, the birth records, the DNA test. "Impossible," he whispered, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew. "The fortune you've kept for me isn't just about money," I continued, scanning the faces of Elysian City's wealthiest families. "It's about justice, about truth." Behind me, Finn, my only ally from the beginning, stood ready. Before us, $1 billion empire hung in the balance. What happened in that moment changed everything. But to understand how I, a girl who once scraped burned porridge from pots in the kitchen, came to stand before the most powerful people in the city, you need to know where my story began. How did a nameless orphan discover she was the rightful heir to one of the world's greatest fortunes? And what price would I pay for claiming what was mine? I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments while I take you back to where it all started, with a lonely little girl and a silver locket that held more secrets than she could ever imagine. 5 years earlier, I woke before dawn as always, the attic room's chill seeping into my bones. My few possessions fit in a wooden box beneath my cot: a worn book, a silver locket with a hawk engraving, and a scrap of velvet I'd had since before I could remember. "Elara, the breakfast service won't prepare itself." Mrs. Marlowe's voice echoed up the narrow stairwell. I rushed to dress in my gray uniform, catching a glimpse of myself in the cracked mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes from another night of strange dreams. Dreams of a woman singing to me, of warm arms and whispered promises. Dreams that vanished with the morning light. The kitchens of Amberwood Estate buzzed with frantic energy. Cook barked orders while footmen carried silver trays laden with delicacies I would never taste. I kept my head down, scrubbing pots with raw hands, invisible to those who dined above. "You missed a spot," Cook snapped, pointing to a copper pot I'd spent 20 minutes polishing. "Do it again." That was life at Amberwood, endless labor with no acknowledgement. I was a ghost haunting corridors I wasn't allowed to walk freely, dusting treasures I could never touch, serving people who looked through me as if I were made of air. "Girl, come here." Mrs. Marlowe appeared at the kitchen doorway, her face pinched with what I'd always thought was disapproval. Now I wonder if it was concern. "Lady Victoria requires assistance with her wardrobe." My stomach nodded. Victoria Thorne, Lord Cedric's niece and heir apparent, enjoyed nothing more than reminding me of my place. "Don't just stand there gawking like a street urchin," Victoria sneered when I entered her lavish chambers. Silks and jewels lay scattered across her bed like fallen stars. "Help me choose something for the garden luncheon," though I doubt someone who dresses in rags would have any sense of style. I held up a blue gown that matched her eyes. That one? Honestly, you have the taste of a blind beggar. She snatched it from my hands. Tell me, what was it like growing up in that dreadful orphanage? Did they feed you scraps from the garbage? The memory flashed before me. St. Bridget's home for wayward children, with its damp stone walls and iron-framed beds. Sister Agnes counting out porridge portions so meager they barely filled our bowls. The older children stealing from the younger ones. The constant hunger that gnawed worse than any cruelty. St. Bridget's taught me gratitude, my lady, I replied, keeping my voice neutral despite the fire in my chest. Victoria laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Gratitude? For what? Being abandoned like unwanted rubbish. My fingers instinctively touched the locket hidden beneath my collar. Sister Agnes had told me it was around my neck when they found me on the orphanage steps, wrapped in nothing but that scrap of velvet with the golden hawk embroidery. Even rubbish has its purpose, my lady. Her hand struck my cheek before I registered her movement. Remember your place, Maid. You exist because we allow it. Later, carrying linens down the service corridor, I pressed my palm against my stinging cheek and allowed myself one silent tear. Just one. I'd learned long ago that crying changes nothing. That looks painful, a voice said from the shadows. I startled, nearly dropping my basket. A young man stepped forward, tall, with kind eyes and worker's hands. I'd seen him around the estate but never spoken to him. I'm fine, I said automatically. You're lying, but I understand why. He offered a small jar. It's witch hazel, good for bruises. I hesitated before taking it. Thank you. I've never seen you in the main house before. Finn Harper. I work the forge and handle repairs. Usually stay clear of the main house and its complications. His eyes lingered on my cheek. Victoria's handiwork? How did you know? Not her first victim. He glanced down the hallway. You should know. There's talk about you below stairs. My heart quickened. What talk? Mrs. Marlowe watches you, not like the others. And when you're not looking, she touches that old portrait in the East Gallery, the one of the young master who died. Before I could question him further, footsteps approached. Finn melted back into the shadows with a finger to his lips. That night I couldn't sleep. Mrs. Marlowe had always been stern but fair. Different somehow. The way she'd look at me when she thought I wouldn't notice, not with disdain, but with something deeper. Recognition. I rose from my bed and crept down to the deserted East Gallery, candle in hand. The portraits of Thorne ancestors watched with painted eyes as I moved silently across the polished floor. At the end hung the portrait Finn mentioned, a handsome young man with kind eyes and a familiar smile. Edward Thorne, according to the brass plate. Died aged 27. What are you doing here, child? Mrs. Marlowe's voice nearly stopped my heart. I spun around, wax dripping onto my fingers. I was just curious about things that don't concern you? Her eyes flicked to the portrait, then back to me. She stepped closer, holding her own candle higher, illuminating my face. Something shifted in her expression, a softening. You have his eyes, she whispered, almost to herself. Whose eyes? She blinked, as if coming back to herself. Bed girl. Now, and if I catch you wandering again, it'll be a week's wages. The next morning, I was assigned to clean the library, a rare privilege. Usually, only the most trusted servants were allowed near the precious books. As I dusted the endless shelves, a book slipped from my grasp, revealing a small door in the paneling behind it. I glanced around, no one watching. My heart pounded as I pressed against the panel. It swung open to reveal a narrow staircase, spiraling upward into darkness. Where did it lead? And why was it hidden? Elara! Victoria's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. I quickly closed the panel and turned. She stood in the doorway, eyes narrowed. What are you doing in here? This room is off limits to someone like you. Mrs. Marlowe assigned me to dust, my lady. Did she now? Victoria circled me like a predator. How interesting. Tell me, what's that around your neck? I've noticed you wearing it. My hand flew to my locket, visible above my collar. I groaned careless. Just a trinket from the orphanage, I lied. Let me see it. She extended her hand, palm up. I clutched it tighter. It's nothing valuable, my lady. Her eyes hardened. I wasn't asking. Just then, Mrs. Marlowe appeared in the doorway. Lady Victoria, your uncle requires your presence in his study immediately. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. We're not finished here, she hissed before sweeping from the room. Mrs. Marlowe lingered, her gaze fixed on the locket at my throat. Be careful with your possessions, Elara. Some things are worth more than their appearance suggests. That night, I lay awake wondering what secrets Amberwood held behind its walls. What connection existed between my locket, the hidden staircase, and Edward Thorne's portrait? And why, when Mrs. Marlowe thought I wasn't listening, had I heard her whisper, "She's so like her mother"? Who was I really? And how much did Mrs. Marlowe know about the truth? 3 nights later, I returned to the library under cover of darkness. The manor slept, but my mind raced with questions that wouldn't let me rest. That hidden staircase behind the bookshelf called to me like a voice from another life. My candle cast dancing shadows across leather-bound volumes as I carefully moved the book that had fallen before. The panel slid open with a whisper of ancient wood. Heart hammering, I raised my light and peered up the narrow staircase. Either turn back now or accept whatever waits above, I murmured to myself, gathering courage. The stairs creaked beneath my weight as I climbed, each step taking me further from the life I knew. At the top, a small door opened into what appeared to be a forgotten study. Dust sheets draped over furniture, cobwebs festooning the corners. My candle illuminated a writing desk positioned beneath a window that overlooked the entire estate. This had been someone's private sanctuary, hidden from prying eyes. I approached the desk reverently, running my fingers along its polished surface. A drawer stuck when I tried to open it. Pressing harder revealed why a false bottom concealed a compartment beneath. Inside lay a bundle of letters tied with faded blue ribbon and sealed with wax bearing the same hawk emblem as my locket. My hands trembled as I broke the seal on the first envelope. My dearest Mira, the moment I saw you in the garden, time stopped. Your laugh, your spirit. You've captured my heart entirely. My family would never approve of the heir to Amberwood falling for a maid, but I care nothing for their outdated traditions. Meet me tonight at our spot by the lake. I'll wait until dawn if necessary. Forever yours, Edward. I sank into the dusty chair, pulse racing. Edward Thorne, the man from the portrait, writing love letters to a maid named Mira. I opened another. My beloved Mira, they've discovered us. Cedric confronted me today, threatening to cut me off completely if I don't end things between us. Little does he know I would gladly trade all of Amberwood's fortune for one day in your arms. They cannot separate us now, not with our child growing within you. We'll leave at midnight. Pack only what you need. By this time tomorrow we'll be free. All my love, Edward. My fingers flew to my locket. Could it be possible? The next letter was in different handwriting, delicate and rushed. My darling Edward, disaster has struck. Your brother's men intercepted me at the gate. They've confined me to the east wing until the baby comes. They speak of sending the child away, of erasing all evidence of our love. I fear what your brother might do to you if you try to rescue me. The doctor they've brought says things that frighten me. Please, if anything happens, find our child. The locket you gave me, I'll make sure our baby has it. Look for the hawk, Edward. Look for our love. Yours eternally, Mira. A final letter, written in shaky script. To whoever finds these letters, my brother has won. An accident on horseback has left me with days to live. Mira died bringing our daughter into this world. A child Cedric claims was stillborn, but I know lives. I've bribed a servant to take her to St. Bridget's with Myra's locket. My brother will never allow a maid's child to inherit the Thorne fortune, but blood cannot be denied forever. If you're reading this, look for a girl with Myra's spirit and my eyes, born on the winter solstice and marked with our emblem, the golden hawk. The Thorne legacy is rightfully hers. Edward Thorne. I clutched the letters to my chest, tears streaming down my face. My birthday, the winter solstice, the locket I'd worn my entire life, and the birthmark on my shoulder blade that Sister Agnes had called the wing mark. A floorboard creaked behind me. I wondered when you'd find your way here, Mrs. Marlowe said, stepping into the candlelight. Your mother used to come to this room to read the books your father gave her. I stood, letters clutched in my trembling hand. You knew? All this time, you knew who I was. I was your mother's lady's maid before I became housekeeper. I helped her through her confinement. I held you moments after you were born. Her stern facade cracked, revealing the weight of decades of secrets. I promised her I would watch over you if you ever returned to Amberwood. But how did I end up here? As a maid in my own home. When Lord Cedric's health began failing last year, I pulled strings to bring you from St. Bridget's. I needed you close, protected. When the truth finally emerged, she reached for my locket. May I? I nodded, allowing her to open it. Inside was a miniature portrait I'd always assumed was an angel. Your mother, Mrs. Marlowe whispered. Mira was the kindest soul I've ever known. Edward worshipped her. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because Victoria has eyes everywhere. Because Lord Cedric would have you removed, or worse, if he suspected. Because until you found these letters yourself, you wouldn't have been ready for the danger that comes with being Edward Thorne's daughter. A sound from the staircase sent Mrs. Marlowe stepping protectively in front of me. Finn appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. I followed you, he admitted. I've been watching out for you since Victoria slapped you. Can he be trusted? I asked Mrs. Marlowe. Finn's father was your father's closest friend, she replied. John Harper knew everything. Finn nodded solemnly. My father told me to keep an eye out for Edward's hawk. I never understood until I saw your locket. In that moment, something shifted between us. A fragile alliance formed in the dust of forgotten secrets. We need to get these letters somewhere safe, Mrs. Marlowe said urgently. By morning, Victoria will know someone was here. How? I asked. She has the night watchman in her pocket. He reports everything. Finn moved to the window. We need to leave. Now, someone's coming across the lawn. We hurried down the hidden staircase, my mind reeling with revelations. As we reached the library, the main door handle turned. Mrs. Marlowe pushed me behind a heavy curtain, motioning for Finn to hide behind a bookcase. Victoria swept in, her nightgown billowing around her. I know someone's in here, she called, her voice cutting through the darkness. Show yourself. I held my breath, letters pressed against my thundering heart. Must have been the wind, my lady, the watchman said from the doorway. Search the entire floor, she commanded. Something doesn't feel right. After they left, we emerged from our hiding places. What do I do now? I whispered. You learn, Mrs. Marlowe replied firmly. You prepare yourself to claim what's yours, and you trust no one except us. Victoria already suspects something, Finn warned. She's been asking questions about you in the village. Then we have little time. Mrs. Marlowe squeezed my hands. Tomorrow, I'll arrange for you to serve in the East Wing. There's someone there you need to meet, someone who can help us. Who? Lady Isolde Thorne, Edward's aunt and the only person Lord Cedric truly fears. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept reading the letters, memorizing every word of my parents' doomed love story. I was their legacy, the child they'd sacrificed everything to protect. As dawn broke, I hid the letters beneath a loose floorboard under my bed and pinned my locket securely inside my dress. If I truly was the heir to the Thorne fortune, I would need more than just letters to prove it. And based on the hatred I'd seen in Victoria's eyes, I would need more than proof to survive the coming storm. Because one thing was certain, if Victoria Thorne discovered my true identity, she wouldn't just fight for her inheritance. She would eliminate the threat entirely. The east wing of Amberwood existed in a different era. Dust cloths draped over furniture, heavy curtains blocking sunlight, and portraits of long-dead Thornes watching from faded frames. Mrs. Marlowe led me down the corridor, her keys jingling with each step. "Lady Isolde hasn't left these rooms in 15 years, she whispered. "Not since her disagreement with Lord Cedric about the family business dealings. Be respectful, but don't cower. She despises weakness." We stopped before an ornate door. Mrs. Marlowe knocked 3 times. "Enter," called a voice like autumn leaves, brittle yet dignified. The room beyond was a surprise, bright, immaculate, filled with books and modern technology. At its center sat an elderly woman with piercing eyes and silver hair arranged in an elegant twist. Despite her advanced years, Lady Isolde Thorne exuded power. "So," she said, studying me over gold-rimmed glasses, "you've finally found your way home." Mrs. Marlowe closed the door. "She discovered the letters, my lady." Lady Isolde beckoned me closer. "Let me look at you properly, child." Her gaze felt like an X-ray cataloging every feature. Edward's chin, Myra's eyes, and that stubborn set to your jaw, that's pure Thorne. "You knew my parents?" I asked. "Edward was my favorite nephew. I advised him against the match. Not because Mira wasn't worthy, but because I knew my nephew Cedric would never allow it." She gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have much to discuss and little time." For the next hour, Lady Isolde filled gaps in my parents' story. How Edward had planned to renounce his inheritance for love. How Cedric had orchestrated Edward's riding accident after learning Mira was pregnant. How Isolde had been powerless to stop it. "I've waited 15 years for this moment," she concluded. "Watching Cedric run this family's legacy into the ground. Seeing Victoria grow more entitled and cruel. Now you're here, the rightful heir." "But I'm just a maid," I protested. "I don't know anything about running an estate or managing wealth." Lady Isolde laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. "And what do you think I've been doing all these years in isolation? Knitting? I've been preparing, gathering evidence. And now I'll prepare you." Thus began my secret education. Each day, I performed my maid duties. But 3 times weekly, I slipped into the East Wing where Lady Isolde taught me family history, business principles, proper etiquette, and the complex web of alliances that governed high society. "Stand straighter," she commanded during one lesson, tapping my shoulder with her cane. "You're a thorn, not a wilting flower. Your posture speaks before your words do." Meanwhile, Victoria's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She fired 3 servants for imagined slights. Twice, I caught her watching me with calculation in her eyes. One afternoon, she cornered me in the conservatory. "You've been disappearing for hours," she hissed, backing me against a marble planter. "Cook says you finish your duties in half the time it took others. And now Mrs. Marlowe treats you like her pet project." "I'm just doing my job, my lady." Her hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. "What's in the East Wing that interests you so much? Who are you meeting there?" I forced my face to remain neutral. "I clean the unused rooms, my lady. Mrs. Marlowe's orders." Liar. Her nails dug into my skin. "Something's happening in this house, and I intend to discover what." She leaned closer. "Did you know Lord Cedric's health is failing? The doctors give him months. Soon, everything will be mine." That evening, I relayed the conversation to Finn as we met in the stables, our secret meeting place. "She's growing desperate," he said, checking outside to ensure we weren't observed. And she's not alone. There have been strangers at the gates asking questions about the staff. What kind of strangers? Men in expensive suits with cold eyes. They offered me money for information about the house, specifically about any new staff who might be related to former employees. Lady Isolde identified them immediately when I described them. The Shadow Society, she said grimly. Cedric's silent business partners. They hold debts over half the aristocratic families in the country and control politicians like puppets. What do they want with me? Control, my dear. They've kept the Thorne fortune accessible through Cedric for years. Victoria is weak-willed and easily manipulated. You, she smiled thinly. You would not be. They'll want you eliminated before you can stake your claim. The danger became real the following week. My morning tea tasted oddly bitter. Instinct made me spit it out. When Mrs. Marlowe tested it, her face went pale. Nightshade, she whispered. Not enough to kill, but sufficient to make you ill for days. We needed irrefutable proof of my identity. Something beyond the letters. Lady Isolde believed the answer lay in her nephew's old rooms, sealed since his death. Breaking in required perfect timing. During a dinner party that occupied the entire household staff, Finn created a distraction in the kitchen while I slipped upstairs with the key Lady Isolde had provided. Edward's rooms remained frozen in time, books on bedside tables, clothes still hanging in wardrobes. I searched frantically, conscious of every passing minute. Nothing in the desk, nothing under floorboards. Then I noticed the painting above the fireplace, a hawk in flight against a stormy sky. Behind it lay a wall safe. The combination, I muttered, running my hands along the frame. My fingers found tiny numbers scratched into the wood, a date. My birthday. The safe swung open to reveal a leather-bound journal and a velvet pouch. Inside the pouch glittered a signet ring bearing the hawk emblem. The journal chronicled Edward's life from university through his final days, including detailed accounts of Cedric's illegal dealings with the Shadow Society. I've got it, I told Finn later, showing him the journal. This proves everything: my parentage, Cedric's crimes, all of it. We need to move quickly, he replied. Victoria's been meeting with men in the village. They're planning something. Lady Isolde agreed. The winter ball is in 3 weeks. Every influential family in the region will attend. That's when you'll make your claim public. The preparations intensified. Mrs. Marlowe altered one of Myra's old gowns to fit me. Lady Isolde drilled me on the names and weaknesses of every guest who would attend. Finn secured copies of all our evidence and hid them throughout the estate. 2 days before the ball, Cook pulled me aside in the kitchen. There's talk below stairs, she whispered. They say you're not who you seem. What do you mean? Some believe you're Edward Thorne's lost child. Come back to claim what's yours. Her eyes softened. I remember your mother. Kindest soul in this cold house. If you're hers, you'll have my support. Hope blossomed. Perhaps we had more allies than we knew. That night, Mrs. Marlowe summoned me to her quarters, her face grave. We've been betrayed. Someone took the letters from under your floorboard. My blood ran cold. Who? Thomas, she said, naming the footman who'd always been kind to me. Victoria doubled his yearly salary. He's told her everything: your meetings with Lady Isolde, the journal, the plan for the ball. Then we've lost, I whispered. No. Mrs. Marlowe's eyes flashed with determination. We move tonight. Lady Isolde has prepared a guest room. You'll no longer pose as a maid. But Victoria will expect us to wait until the ball. The element of surprise is now our advantage. As we hurried through the darkened hallways, a figure stepped from the shadows. Thomas, his face twisted with regret. I'm sorry, Elara, truly, but they have my sister. Behind him stood Victoria, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. How predictable, she said coldly. Scurrying about in the night like the rats you are. Mrs. Marlowe pushed me behind her. Run. I turned to flee, but one of the men moved with startling speed. A cloth pressed against my face. Chemical sweetness filled my lungs. As darkness claimed me, I heard Victoria laugh. "Take her to the lake house. Make sure no one sees you. By morning, the last Thorne heir will have vanished, just like her mother." Cold water splashed across my face, jolting me awake. I lay bound on a wooden floor, the musty scent of disuse filling my nostrils. Moonlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating the abandoned lake house. "She's awake," a gruff voice announced. Victoria knelt beside me, her perfect features contorted with hatred. "Did you really think you could take what's mine? A serving girl playing dress-up as a Thorne." I tested my restraints rope, tight but hastily tied. "I'm not playing at anything. Blood doesn't lie, Victoria. Blood." She laughed. "The only blood that matters is the kind backed by power." She dangled my locket before me. "This trinket proves nothing. By morning, you'll be on a cargo ship to somewhere very far away." She turned to her hired men. "Watch her. I need to return before my absence is noticed. The ball starts in 3 hours." After she left, the men settled by the door, passing a flask between them. I worked silently at my bindings, feeling them gradually loosen. If I could free myself, perhaps I could. Glass shattered somewhere outside. The men jumped to their feet. "Check it out," one ordered the other. The moment the door opened, a dark figure rushed in. The clash was brief and violent. When it ended, both men lay unconscious, and Finn stood breathing heavily, a bruise forming on his jaw. "I followed them from the house," he said, cutting my ropes. "Mrs. Marlowe is safe. Lady Isolde has her secured in the East Wing. Victoria has my locket and the journal. But not this." Finn pulled Edward's signet ring from his pocket. "You gave it to me for safekeeping last week. Remember?" Hope flickered within me. "The ball starts in 2 hours. Half the country's elite will be there." His eyes met mine with unwavering faith. It's time they met Edward Thorne's daughter. Lady Isolde waited for us in her chambers, face tight with concern. "Thank God," she breathed, embracing me briefly before stepping back to business. "We have little time. Victoria believes you neutralized. That's our advantage." From a wardrobe, she withdrew a gown that stole my breath, midnight blue silk embroidered with silver stars, elegant yet commanding. "Your mother's ball gown," she explained. "Mira wore this the night Edward announced his intention to marry her, before Cedric intervened." As I dressed, Lady Isolde outlined our revised plan. "Victoria has your original evidence, but not everything. I've kept copies of the most damning documents. The servants loyal to us have created a diversion to keep Victoria occupied until the perfect moment." An hour later, I barely recognized my reflection. The maid had vanished, replaced by a woman who stood tall, eyes bright with purpose, Edward's signet ring gleaming on a chain around her neck. "Remember," Lady Isolde said, adjusting my hair, "you are not asking for acceptance. You are claiming what is rightfully yours." The winter ball transformed Amberwood into a palace of light. Carriages lined the drive, disgorging guests in finery that sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Finn and I slipped in through a servant's passage, emerging near the grand staircase. From our hidden vantage point, I spotted Victoria holding court, laughing as though she hadn't just attempted kidnapping. Lord Cedric sat in his wheelchair nearby, frail but eyes still sharp. The orchestra played a waltz, couples swirling across polished marble. "Now," I whispered. Finn squeezed my hand. "Now." I stepped into view at the top of the staircase just as the music ended. For a heartbeat, no one noticed. Then heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Victoria's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. The orchestra conductor, following Lady Isolde's instructions, struck up the traditional Thorne family waltz, played at every significant family occasion for generations. Each step down felt like destiny unfolding. Guests parted before me, expressions ranging from curiosity to shock. I walked directly to Lord Cedric, whose pallid face had drained of what little color it possessed. "Good evening, uncle," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent hall. "I believe it's time we were properly introduced." His gnarled hands gripped his wheelchair. "Who are you?" I withdrew a folded document from my clutch. A birth certificate Lady Isolde had safeguarded for 19 years. "I am Elara Thorne, daughter of Edward Thorne and Mira Cole." Victoria lunged forward. "She's lying. She's nothing but a maid with delusions." "A maid you tried to have kidnapped tonight," I countered. "A maid you feared enough to steal evidence from." I faced the crowd. Evidence of how Edward Thorne died, not in an accident, but murdered after discovering his brother's illegal dealings with the Shadow Society. Gasps erupted as I named the organization few dared mention publicly. Two distinguished men near the refreshments exchanged alarmed glances. Lord Cedric's face contorted. "You cannot prove these wild accusations." "Can't I?" I slipped Edward's signet ring from its chain, pressing it into a block of sealing wax provided by Finn. The hawk emblem matched perfectly with the seal on documents everyone recognized. My father's ring, his blood in my veins, his legacy in my hands. Victoria's laugh was brittle. "A stolen ring proves nothing. This servant girl is mentally disturbed. She's been planning this charade for months." "That's true," came a voice from the doorway. Mrs. Marlowe stepped forward, dignity in every line of her body. "She has been planning to reclaim what was stolen from her. I delivered Elara myself the night Mira died. I placed the locket around her neck." Lord Cedric's composure cracked. "Marlowe, you overstep." "No, your lordship. For 19 years I've stepped lightly around your crimes. No more." Finn moved to my side. "I can testify to the kidnapping attempt tonight, as can the two men currently tied up in your gardener's shed." Murmurs grew louder. Victoria's face transformed into a mask of fury. "You'll regret this humiliation," she hissed, reaching for something in her clutch. Lord Cedric raised a trembling hand. "Enough." His voice, though weak, silenced the room. I recognized those eyes, Edward's eyes. He looked around at the watching crowd, at decades of deception crumbling around him. She is a Thorne." Victoria screamed in outrage, lunging toward me with what I now saw was a small pistol. Finn intercepted her, the weapon clattering across marble as they struggled. Security personnel rushed in, restraining her as she thrashed and spat threats. I stood unmoved, meeting my uncle's defeated gaze. "The Thorne legacy," I said clearly for all to hear, "will no longer be built on secrets and suffering. From this night forward, it belongs to those who deserve truth and justice." The crowd parted again as Lady Isolde emerged, walking tall despite her years. "The board of directors will meet tomorrow morning," she announced. "I believe they'll find the current leadership lacking." As cameras flashed and voices rose in astonishment around us, I felt the weight of generations settling upon my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle I was born to wear. The orphan Maid had come home at last. The first morning I woke as the recognized heir to the Thorne fortune. Sunlight streamed through windows that had previously been shuttered. I touched the silk sheets, still unable to believe the bed that once belonged to my father was now mine. But ownership means nothing without purpose. "What will you do first?" Finn asked as we walked the grounds that crisp winter morning, frost crunching beneath our boots. I stopped at the edge of the frozen lake where Victoria had planned to dispose of me. "Transform everything," I said, looking back at Amberwood's imposing facade. "This place has been a monument to greed for too long." Within weeks, I redirected the Thorne Industries Board toward sustainable investments and ethical practices. The Shadow Society's representatives were removed, their financial hooks disentangled from our accounts. Victoria faced criminal charges for attempted kidnapping and assault, her carefully constructed social mask shattered beyond repair. "You fired 30% of the executive staff," Mrs. Marlowe noted one evening as she joined me for tea, no longer as a housekeeper but as my trusted advisor. "Only those who participated in Uncle Cedric's schemes," I replied, signing documents that would convert the East Wing into a training center for disadvantaged youth. "Amberwood has enough rooms to house 50 students, with space for classrooms and workshops." Lord Cedric, frail but seemingly unburdened by the weight of his secrets, moved to a cottage on the property's edge. Our relationship remained complicated. He was both the architect of my suffering and a broken man seeking redemption. In rare moments of clarity, he shared stories of my father's youth, filling gaps in my understanding of who Edward Thorne had been. "Your father would be proud," he told me during one such conversation. "He always said wealth was meaningless unless it improved lives." I took those words to heart. The Thorne Foundation launched initiatives supporting education for orphan children. I established fair wages and housing for all estate workers. Former servants became department heads based on their skills rather than their origins. Cook became our culinary director, overseeing nutritional programs for community schools. Thomas, after making amends, managed security with integrity and compassion. "The girl from St. Bridget's is changing how fortunes work," a newspaper headline proclaimed 6 months after my ascension. The accompanying photo showed me with a group of women from the village, breaking ground on a new medical facility. Finn remained my steadfast ally through it all, his practical wisdom balancing my ambitious vision. Our relationship deepened gradually, like a tree setting roots, unhurried yet inevitable. "The forge needs modernizing," he said one afternoon as I visited his workshop. His hands, strong and capable, sketched designs for improved tools. "With proper equipment, we could train apprentices." "Always thinking of others," I replied, noticing how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "I learned from watching you." Those simple words meant more than all the wealth I'd inherited. By summer, his workshop expanded into a technical school where village youth learned trades that would sustain them for life. On the anniversary of my discovery of the hidden letters, I returned to St. Bridget's orphanage. The building stood as austere as ever, but inside, changes were evident. Fresh paint brightened walls, new beds replaced rusted frames, and children's artwork hung in previously barren corridors. "Miss Thorne," Sister Agnes greeted me, her once stern face softened with age. "The children have been waiting all morning." In the main hall, 24 orphans gathered, wearing clean clothes provided by the foundation. I sat among them, a silver locket identical to mine in my hands. "This is for you," I told a small girl with determined eyes who reminded me of myself. "To remember that your beginning doesn't determine your future." That night, back at Amberwood, I stood before my parents' portrait, commissioned from a talented local artist based on photographs and descriptions. Myra's gentle smile, Edward's kind eyes, they watched over the entrance hall, welcoming visitors to a house transformed by love. Finn joined me, his hand finding mine in comfortable silence. "Sometimes I still expect to wake up back in the attic room," I confessed, "to find this was all a dream." "Not a dream," he said softly, "just a long-delayed justice." Later, I walked alone through gardens now open to the community. The billion-dollar fortune that once represented only power and privilege now funded schools, hospitals, and housing across the region. Money meant nothing without compassion to guide its use. Standing under stars that had witnessed both my lowest moments and greatest triumphs, I finally understood. The true inheritance wasn't the wealth or the name. It was the chance to rewrite what power could accomplish when wielded with mercy instead of might. The maid had indeed become the heiress. But more importantly, the forgotten girl had found her purpose. And that was worth more than all the billions in the Thorne accounts. Thank you for staying with me through this journey from servant to heiress, from powerless to powerful. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that circumstances don't determine our worth. And if you want to hear more tales of triumph and transformation, subscribe to Soul Thread Stories and join our community of storytellers and dreamers. Until next time, remember that even the most ordinary life can hide extraordinary possibilities.